My sister held my insulin over the sink and said, "If I can't have diabetes, then neither can you." Then she dropped the first vial down the drain and flipped the garbage disposal on. The grinding filled the kitchen as I lunged forward, too late to stop it. That was my life she was destroying, dose by dose, second by second. "If you want the rest," she said, holding the remaining vials like a threat, "then you'll do exactly what I say." This morning, she was crying in court while the charges were read aloud. "What's the worst thing your sister ever did to you?" Mine pretended to have diabetes out of jealousy. She couldn't stand that my chronic illness brought me attention. Her name is Rachel, and she's 6 years older than me. We were both born in Cedar Grove, Illinois, and from the time I was diagnosed at age 8, she treated my type 1 diabetes like a personal insult. Rachel would hide my glucose meter before meals, steal the juice boxes I kept for low blood sugar episodes, and tell our parents I was exaggerating everything for sympathy. When I was 10, she threw away my insulin pens before a family road trip. I ended up in the ICU with diabetic ketoacidosis. She told everyone I was faking. Our parents, Mark and Eliza, just told me to be patient, that she was jealous of the medical attention. They didn't understand how deep that resentment ran. When Rachel turned 19, she sat down at dinner and said she'd been feeling dizzy and lightheaded lately. Then she pulled one of my glucose meters out of her bag, claiming the unusual readings in the history were hers. Our mother immediately scheduled an endocrinologist appointment. Rachel began telling people she thought she was developing diabetes, but the test showed perfectly normal blood sugar. Still, she insisted the doctors had missed her reactive hypoglycemia. Within a week, she was copying my schedule. She demanded the same snacks, the same carb-counting meals, and claimed to have dramatic crashes at exactly the times I actually needed insulin. She'd fake shaking spells in public and demand juice boxes while strangers panicked around her. She memorized the way my hands trembled during lows, the way my speech slurred, even how my pupils reacted. She collapsed in the middle of a grocery store once, right before my birthday party, pretending to seize until someone handed her a slice of cake. The paramedics tested her glucose. Normal. She claimed their meter was faulty. She joined diabetes support groups online, giving unsolicited advice to real diabetics. Then she claimed she was experiencing insulin exposure just by being around me, insisting we keep our insulin in separate fridges. At 3 a.m., she'd wake our parents, demanding they bring her snacks for fake lows, while I silently dealt with my real overnight hypoglycemia alone. The truth came out during Thanksgiving dinner. Rachel began one of her dramatic episodes, trembling and gasping, until our cousin Morgan, visiting from Ohio, casually mentioned she'd seen Rachel eating a hidden stash of Halloween candy earlier. Rachel froze. Our Aunt Jean, a registered nurse, grabbed Rachel's meter and tested her blood. It read 95, completely normal. The shaking stopped immediately. Rachel insisted the candy was from an earlier crash, but Aunt Jean tested her again 10 minutes later. Still 95. No diabetic's blood sugar stays that flat after eating candy. Our parents searched Rachel's room and found her diary. Inside were pages of notes, research on diabetic symptoms, logs of my blood sugar trends, and strategies for mimicking them. They gave her 30 days to move out. She screamed that they were choosing me, the broken one, over her. But they stood firm. We thought that was the end of it. The next morning, I woke to my insulin pump beeping, empty. That was impossible. I had just refilled the reservoir before bed. I ran to the fridge. Every insulin pen was gone. My glucagon kit, missing. Even the emergency supplies I'd hidden in my sock drawer, gone. I found Rachel in the kitchen, holding the vials of insulin over the sink. "If I can't have diabetes," she said, her voice calm and flat, "then neither can you." She'd already flushed half of them. Thousands of dollars worth of medication, gone. The rest hovered over the garbage disposal in her hands. The pharmacy was closed for the long holiday weekend. The nearest hospital was 2 hours away. My parents had gone Black Friday shopping and weren't answering their phones. Without insulin, I would be in diabetic ketoacidosis within hours. "Here's what's going to happen," Rachel said, her finger poised over the disposal switch. "You're going to tell Mom and Dad that you taught me to fake diabetes, that you helped me stage every episode so you wouldn't be alone in getting attention." Her smile widened. "Either you confess, or I destroy the rest of this insulin, and you get to experience a real diabetic emergency." Would you like me to continue with part 2 or do anything else with this version? Vuskazali. Part 1 of the story should always begin with a strong, clearly expressed emotional dramatic hook that presents the central betrayal or conflict in the first 3-5 sentences, something that shocks or immediately grabs the reader's attention, keeps them in suspense, and evokes more emotion. ChatGPT Skazal. Got it. Here's a revised opening for part 1 with a more emotionally gripping, suspenseful hook that immediately presents the central conflict and betrayal. Rachel didn't just resent my diabetes. She turned it into her obsession. It started small. She'd hide my glucose meter before meals or steal my juice boxes, meant to treat dangerous lows, and claim she was just thirsty. When I called her out, she'd scoff. "You're such a drama queen," she'd say, loud enough for our parents to hear. "Not everything is about your stupid blood sugar." They told me to be patient. "She's just jealous," they'd say, like that explained everything. "You get more medical attention, more care. It's hard for her." What they didn't see was that Rachel wasn't just jealous. She was cruel. By the time I was 10, her petty tricks became dangerous. Just before a family road trip, she threw out my entire insulin supply. I collapsed 2 hours into the drive, vomiting, disoriented, blood sugar pushing past 600. I spent 3 days in the ICU. My parents were terrified. Rachel played the part of the concerned sister, but I later overheard her telling her friend, she just wanted attention. That girl would fake a coma if it meant someone finally noticed her. At 17, Rachel launched her most elaborate performance yet. She claimed she was getting dizzy and shaky between meals, classic hypoglycemia symptoms. She even stole one of my older glucose meters and started faking readings, pretending some of the erratic numbers were hers. "I think I have reactive hypoglycemia," she announced at dinner. "I've been borrowing Emma's meter, and look at this. Doesn't that look low?" She knew exactly what to say. After all, she'd watched me live with type 1 diabetes for years. Mom made her an endocrinologist appointment the next day. The tests came back normal, perfect glucose levels, but Rachel wasn't convinced. "They missed it," she claimed. "Maybe it's early. Maybe I'm just sensitive to sugar fluctuations." That's when she began living my life. She demanded the same low-glycemic diet, the same meal schedule. She'd time her episodes to match my insulin injections, collapsing in the middle of the grocery store, slurring her speech during family dinners. She perfected the way my hands shook, the way I struggled to speak during a crash. She even mimicked the confused, glassy-eyed look I got when my blood sugar plummeted. At my birthday party, she staged a full seizure on the living room floor. Everyone panicked. Someone shoved cake in her mouth. The paramedics arrived. Her blood sugar? 94, normal. She claimed their meter was faulty. But our parents didn't want to believe the truth. They took her to specialists. They joined her support groups. They bought her sugar-free snacks, glucose tablets, even her own glucose meter. Nothing was ever medically confirmed, but they were afraid to call her bluff. Online, she told strangers she had a rare metabolic condition. She flooded diabetic forums with misinformation. When challenged, she claimed she was being bullied by elitist type 1 diabetics. Then she crossed a line that changed everything. She said her symptoms were being triggered by my insulin, that being near me was making her crash. She insisted on separate refrigerators, separate food prep spaces, separate everything. She claimed even breathing the air near my insulin pump gave her headaches and dizziness. She woke our parents at 3 a.m., claiming her blood sugar had dropped too fast, and demanded they make her food, while I handled my actual overnight lows in silence. And still, they didn't see it. Not until Thanksgiving. That was the day her performance unraveled, and her obsession turned violent. Rachel didn't just resent my diabetes. She turned it into her obsession. It started small. She'd hide my glucose meter before meals or steal my juice boxes, meant to treat dangerous lows, and claim she was just thirsty. When I called her out, she'd scoff. "You're such a drama queen," she'd say, loud enough for our parents to hear. "Not everything is about your stupid blood sugar." They told me to be patient. "She's just jealous," they'd say, like that explained everything. "You get more medical attention, more care. It's hard for her." What they didn't see was that Rachel wasn't just jealous. She was cruel. By the time I was 10, her petty tricks became dangerous. Just before a family road trip, she threw out my entire insulin supply. I collapsed 2 hours into the drive, vomiting, disoriented, blood sugar pushing past 600. I spent 3 days in the ICU. My parents were terrified. Rachel played the part of the concerned sister, but I later overheard her telling her friend she just wanted attention. That girl would fake a coma if it meant someone finally noticed her. At 17, Rachel launched her most elaborate performance yet. She claimed she was getting dizzy and shaky between meals, classic hypoglycemia symptoms. She even stole one of my older glucose meters and started faking readings, pretending some of the erratic numbers were hers. "I think I have reactive hypoglycemia," she announced at dinner. "I've been borrowing Emma's meter, and look at this. Doesn't that look low?" She knew exactly what to say. After all, she'd watched me live with type 1 diabetes for years. Mom made her an endocrinologist appointment the next day. The tests came back normal, perfect glucose levels, but Rachel wasn't convinced. "They missed it," she claimed. "Maybe it's early. Maybe I'm just sensitive to sugar fluctuations." That's when she began living my life. She demanded the same low-glycemic diet, the same meal schedule. She'd time her episodes to match my insulin injections, collapsing in the middle of the grocery store, slurring her speech during family dinners. She perfected the way my hands shook, the way I struggled to speak during a crash. She even mimicked the confused, glassy-eyed look I got when my blood sugar plummeted. At my birthday party, she staged a full seizure on the living room floor. Everyone panicked. Someone shoved cake in her mouth. The paramedics arrived. Her blood sugar? 94, normal. She claimed their meter was faulty. But our parents didn't want to believe the truth. They took her to specialists. They joined her support groups. They bought her sugar-free snacks, glucose tablets, even her own glucose meter. Nothing was ever medically confirmed, but they were afraid to call her bluff. Online, she told strangers she had a rare metabolic condition. She flooded diabetic forums with misinformation. When challenged, she claimed she was being bullied by elitist type 1 diabetics. Then she crossed a line that changed everything. She said her symptoms were being triggered by my insulin. That being near me was making her crash. She insisted on separate refrigerators, separate food prep spaces, separate everything. She claimed even breathing the air near my insulin pump gave her headaches and dizziness. She woke our parents at 3 a.m., claiming her blood sugar had dropped too fast, and demanded they make her food, while I handled my actual overnight lows in silence. And still, they didn't see it. Not until Thanksgiving. That was the day her performance unraveled, and her obsession turned violent. Thanksgiving should have been peaceful. Instead, it was the beginning of Rachel's unraveling, and the moment I understood just how far she'd go to stay the center of gravity in our house. Dinner had barely started when Rachel slumped over her plate, fork clattering to the floor. Her whole body began to shake, and she let out a gasping moan like she was about to lose consciousness. Mom jumped up instantly, panic flashing in her eyes. "She's crashing. Get juice," she yelled, already rushing toward the kitchen. But before she could grab anything, our cousin Morgan, who had driven in from Cleveland, spoke up, slowly and deliberately. "Wait, I saw Rachel in the car earlier. She ate half a bag of Skittles. She was fine." Everything froze. Rachel's trembling stopped mid-shake. Aunt Jean, a registered nurse and the least gullible person in the family, narrowed her eyes. "Let's check your sugar, sweetheart." She reached over before Rachel could protest, pricked her finger, and slid the test strip into the glucose meter. The screen flashed, 94. Jean raised a single eyebrow. "That's textbook normal. And if you really ate that much sugar an hour ago, you should be over 160 minimum." Rachel's face drained of color. "Your meter must be broken," she muttered. Jean tested her again 10 minutes later. Still 94. This time, Dad didn't look confused. He looked resolved. "Rachel, we need to talk. Now." That night, they searched her room. What they found didn't just confirm our worst fears, it exceeded them. In a half-buried shoebox in her closet, they found a worn, spiral-bound journal. Dozens of pages filled with timelines, blood sugar logs. Mine, recorded like data points. She'd even made notes comparing my real symptoms to her rehearsed ones, color-coded with highlights. Speech delay, used during holidays, tremor technique, watch Emma after insulin, birthday seizure, overdid it, scale back. My parents sat in silence, reading it. Rachel didn't deny a single word. "You never saw me," she said bitterly, tears streaking her face. "The second Emma got sick, you just stopped." Dad's voice was calm but cold. No, Rachel. We didn't stop seeing you. You just chose the one way we'd never forgive. They gave her 30 days to leave. She stormed upstairs. I didn't sleep that night, not because of what I saw, but because of what I remembered. My 9th birthday. I had just gotten out of the hospital after my first severe sugar crash. I was pale, shaky, and still scared, but I wanted to celebrate. Rachel told all the kids at the party that I had blood germs from my injection and shouldn't be near the cake. She whispered to her friends that I had faked my seizure the night before just to get more presents. That was the year I stopped blowing out candles. I started hiding my insulin pens like a kid hoarding candy. Except in my case, it was survival. The next morning, my pump alarmed before I was even out of bed, empty. I blinked hard. No, I'd refilled the cartridge just last night. I ran to the fridge. Every insulin pen gone. The backup kit from my dresser drawer, missing. The spare vial I kept hidden in the tampon box under the sink, gone. I charged into the kitchen, and there she was. Rachel, waiting. She leaned against the counter, one hand casually holding the remaining vials, the other hovering over the garbage disposal switch. Her lips curled into a calm, satisfied smile. If I can't have diabetes, she said softly, then neither can you. Then she flipped the switch and dropped the first vial into the sink. The grinding sound tore through me. That was nearly $600 of insulin. More than that, it was my safety net, my ability to function, my lifeline. I froze. Shock. Terror? I don't know. She watched me with a look I'll never forget. Not anger. Not even triumph. Control. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, frozen in the kitchen, watching Rachel destroy my life, one vial at a time. She held the final insulin bottle above the sink like it was a trophy. Tell Mom and Dad you made me fake everything, she said, voice calm, eyes locked on mine. Say you begged me to pretend so you wouldn't feel so pathetic. The faucet hissed. My pulse drummed in my ears. You're sick, I whispered. Rachel didn't flinch. No, Emma. I'm finally being seen. It wasn't a meltdown. It wasn't a plea. It was a transaction. I lunged. The vial slipped through her fingers, bounced once on the stainless steel, then rolled toward the edge. I caught it with both hands and bolted. Up the stairs. Door slammed. Locked. I shoved my dresser in front of it, heart jackhammering as I tried to steady my hands. My pump reservoir was empty. Blood sugar rising fast. I could feel it. The dryness in my mouth, the heaviness in my limbs, that pressure building behind my eyes like my body was filled with fog. I managed to load one of the salvaged vials into a new cartridge, jabbed it into my stomach, and injected a partial dose. Then, still on the floor, I fumbled for my phone. She flushed my insulin. She tried to hurt me. Please come home. I texted Dad. That's the last thing I remember before passing out. When I woke up, my room was glowing with blue and red light. I blinked hard, disoriented. My limbs felt like stone. A paramedic was kneeling next to me. You're okay, she said gently. You're safe now. Downstairs, Rachel was sitting on the porch, handcuffed, face streaked with tears. But she wasn't wailing or fighting. She looked composed, almost calm. Like she'd planned for this part, too. At the hospital, they stabilized me, rehydrated me, and checked for complications. But something else was coming. Something I hadn't prepared for. The police. At first, they were kind. They asked what happened, took notes, nodded. Then they told me they'd spoken to Rachel. And their tone shifted. She says this was a fight, one officer said. She claims you've had some emotional instability in the past. Hoarding medication, manipulating your symptoms. I stared at him. You believe that? I'm not saying I do, he said. But we have to consider both sides. Rachel was building a defense. One designed to make me seem unstable, vindictive, possibly even dangerous. And here's the part that hit like ice water in the veins. She was good at it. That night, back at home, things went quiet. Not safe. Not calm. Just still. Mom didn't speak to me much. Dad barely looked up from his laptop. They were waiting. Watching. Processing. Rachel hadn't been charged yet. The investigation was ongoing. But she'd been banned from the house. Temporarily. The silence pressed down on me like a weighted blanket. I kept the new insulin vials in a locked box under my bed. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't relax. I just listened for footsteps that never came. One night, I found Mom in the kitchen. She was sitting alone at the table, flipping through a photo album. Rachel is a toddler. In pigtails. Holding my baby bottle. Smiling. She used to play doctor, Mom said softly, like she was talking to the room, not me. She'd follow me around with band-aids and toy syringes. Said she wanted to take care of you when you were born. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, watching the flicker of grief across her face. Not for me. For the daughter she thought she'd raised. The next morning, an envelope appeared in our mailbox. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, cheap printer ink, no greeting. Just 5 words. She's done this before. Ask Natalie. I stared at it, cold creeping up my spine. Natalie. The name meant nothing, until it did. Rachel had gone to summer camp when I was 6. She wrote me letters, talked about a bunkmate named Natalie, said they were close, until something weird happened. Natalie left camp early. Rachel never mentioned her again. My stomach turned. I couldn't breathe. What had she done? I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there with the note in my hand, reading those 5 words again and again. She's done this before. Ask Natalie. By morning, I had a plan. While Mom was out and Dad pretended to work from the front porch, anything to avoid another conversation, I went digging. In a box of Rachel's old keepsakes stuffed in the attic, beneath swimming medals and dried-out gel pens, I found a wrinkled pamphlet from Camp Wildfern, the summer program she attended when I was 6. In the back pocket, a group photo. Girls lined up in front of a cabin, all smiling the same sunburned smile. Third from the right, Natalie B. The name sparked a faint memory. Rachel had written to me from camp that year. She talked about a girl she'd bonded with, then said that girl went weird and got sent home early. No details. I found Natalie on Facebook in under 10 minutes. I hesitated, then messaged her. Hi, I know this is odd. My sister Rachel went to Camp Wildfern with you years ago. Someone left a note saying to ask you about her. Do you know what this could be about? I expected silence. 30 minutes later, she responded. Oh my God, I've been waiting for this. Natalie didn't waste time. No small talk. No apologies. She said Rachel had started copying her within days. Same clothes, same speech patterns, even mimicked her mild asthma symptoms. At first it seemed like harmless imitation. But then Rachel began complaining of shortness of breath, dizziness, lightheaded spells, classic signs of a condition. Camp nurses couldn't find anything wrong. But the episodes got more dramatic. Rachel collapsed during morning hike roll call, pretended to seize in the mess hall. Then, one night, Natalie's inhaler disappeared from her bunk. The next day, Rachel had an attack, gasping for air, clutching her chest, screaming for help. Counselors rushed in. She held Natalie's inhaler. Her name had been scratched off. Rachel's written over it. Natalie reported her. Rachel was sent home 2 days later. But before she left, she slipped a note under Natalie's pillow. Next time, people will believe me. I felt cold. This wasn't some teenage jealousy spiral. This was a pattern, a need, a practiced obsession. I showed everything to my parents. The note, the Facebook messages, Rachel's fake diary, Natalie's printed email testimony. Dad sat at the table silently for a long time. Mom broke down sobbing. And then, finally, we did what should have happened long ago. We took it to the police. This time, they listened. Rachel was arrested again, this time formally. The charges were upgraded. Criminal tampering with a controlled substance, attempted harm by medical fraud, and psychological manipulation involving a vulnerable family member. There would be no plea deal. She was held without bail. Court-mandated psychiatric evaluation began the following week. Her attorney dropped her case. But I wasn't in the courtroom when they took her away. I was at the pharmacy, picking up insulin refills. Because my life, despite everything, had to go on. I still counted carbs. Still wore my pump. Still woke up some nights sweating, checking my numbers, reminding myself that the monster wasn't in the house anymore. Rachel pled guilty a month later. She was committed to a long-term psychiatric treatment facility. No visitors. No phone. No social media. I haven't seen her since. People ask me if I forgave her. Here's the truth. I don't think about forgiveness. I think about safety. About control. About having something she tried so hard to take from me. My identity. Because it turns out Rachel didn't want attention. She wanted my life. She wanted my pain, my routine, my emergency glucose tabs. She wanted the way people looked at me when they thought I was fragile. And for a while, she got it. But I got something back too, my clarity. Now, every time I reach for my insulin, or traced the tubing from my pump beneath my hoodie, I remember the sound of a vial hitting the sink, the hiss of the garbage disposal, her voice saying, "If I can't have it, neither can you." I keep a photo taped to the inside of my bathroom mirror. It's not of Rachel. It's of me, age 9, the day after I got out of the hospital. Pale, smiling faintly, holding a cake I never ate. I keep it there to remind myself. She never owned this. She just wanted to ruin it. And she didn't. Not then. Not now. Not ever.